I appreciate you joining us for another look into God's Word. Come on with us to the Gospel of Luke. We are going to be looking at the unjust steward in Luke chapter 16. We're going to have to read a little bit as we consider this parable, but come on with us to Luke 16 and let's read it together. Luke 16, top of the chapter. He also said to his disciples, "There is a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So he called him and said to him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be my steward.' Then the steward said within himself, 'What shall I do? For my master is taking away the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig. I am ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses.' So he called every one of his master's debtors to him, and said to the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, 'Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Verse 7, then he said to another, 'How much do you owe?' 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, 'Take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward, because he had dealt shrewdly, for the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much, and he who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon." We will say there are a myriad, a lot of people have a lot of different things to say about this parable of the unjust steward. And it's because of what is said in that passage about the man was commended. So the question is, was he commended for his dishonesty? Is this somehow condoning dishonesty? And I don't think that's the case. And just in the few minutes we don't have a whole lot of time to delve into it, but I wanted you to consider a few points we can make about the passage and just see if we can't get a better understanding of it. And we'll begin with this. I think one of the main points of the parable is you need to be merciful to others. This parable is actually sandwiched in between the parable of the prodigal son, which that's also a part of those same three parables. And remember how those three parables, what led to those being taught. You had the Pharisees who were griping about Jesus because he was with sinners. All right? So when you think about that idea, what those parables are about, and you see it most clearly in the prodigal son, the parable's really not about the prodigal son. The parable's actually about the other brother who will not come in and rejoice and also be merciful. Okay, so you have this parable of the unjust steward that is sandwiched in between the prodigal son, but also it's on the other side of the bookend is the rich man and Lazarus. Now, what was the rich man's problem? Lo and behold, it's the same problem. He was not merciful to Lazarus. Well, this parable that is sandwiched in between them is about the same thing. The unjust steward, what he had to learn was, you need to be nice to others. You need to be merciful to others. To go back and to look at the passage as he goes around, that idea of verse 9, I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. It's not that the friends were unrighteous. It's talking about money. And we see that more clearly down in verse 13. It's about make friends, be friendly. And that's what this man learned to do. He learned to be friendly. He learned to think about others and not just himself. I think that's one of the main points of this parable. He had been wasteful, and in that, we do need to connect it back to the parable of the prodigal son, because you actually have all these parables: the parable of the prodigal, the parable of the unjust steward, the rich man. If the rich man is parable, that's a whole other discussion, though. Regardless, you have three accounts. What had the rich man wasted his had the rich man wasted his riches, his blessings? Yes. The prodigal son wasted his blessings. And the brother, did he appreciate his blessings? So in that, was he not also being wasteful? With here, this man, the accusation is made right at the beginning of the chapter. Let me get it back, get back over there with you. The accusation was made there in verse 1. Accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. That actually helps us, because it helps us to understand what stewardship is about. The Lord has been merciful to us, and in that he has given us mercy that we may be merciful to others. The Lord loves us, and we should love others. The Lord has richly given that we may richly share. This man, the accusation was, he'd been wasteful, and he had to do what he could. We'll come back to that. There will be an accounting. That's another lesson that we can take from this parable. There will be an accounting. We will stand before the Lord. And we need to recognize that this is one of the reasons, as we think about judgment, we think about Judgment Day. This is one of the reasons that we need to be found faithful stewards. And that's what this man had not been. But you might also think about the man. Let me get back over there. Like I said, we just don't have time to really delve deeply into this parable, but it's an interesting one. But to look at it, and let me get down a little bit further. Because he had made friends, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home. What I want you to think about very, very simply, or to consider at least, is the idea the man was going to need them. And you think about, for example, go back to the prodigal son. The prodigal son comes home. The father says, bring out the robe, the ring, fatted calf, all those things, right? The son says before he comes to the father, I'm going to go back, I'm going to say, just make me like one of your hired servants. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Well, he didn't make him like one of his hired servants. He made him, my son, who was dead is alive again. The son was given to think about it. In order for the other son, who was out in the field, and I understand we're talking about two different parables now. The other son who was out in the field, in order for him to be a part of his father's house, who is he going to have to learn to get along with? He's going to have to learn to get along with the son who came home. I'd suggest they actually both came home, by the way. Or at least the father wanted them both to come home. One was in a faraway land, one was out in the field. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Whole nother lesson, I should say. Here with the unjust steward, look at that phrase again. That they may receive you into an everlasting home. If what this man, to think about the parable and to think about what's going on here, think about it this way. The stewardship is being taken away from the man. Well, the man realizes, I need to be with them. So he's going to do what he can to keep a connection there. You're going to need them. You're going to need them. You might think about, for example, like Jews and Gentiles. The Jews were going to need the Gentiles. The Gentiles were going to need the Jews. They were going to need each other. But you might think about that idea, and we could wax on and on about that. You're going to need them. The unjust steward realized if he was going to come back, in a sense, it was going to be because of their help. Anyway, just a little bit of our daily bread about the unjust steward. What the man is commended for is shrewdness. And frankly, what the man did was he did what he could. He did everything that he could. And in that, he is our example. It's not that we should be dishonest. It's that we should do everything we can. That's what we should do. We should be shrewd. The truth of the matter is what the Lord said, of course, that the sons of this world are often more shrewd than the sons of light. We need to be shrewd. We need to use the intelligence the Lord has blessed us with, and we need to do everything we can to make sure we have that eternal home ourselves. Anyway, hope this study's been beneficial to you. Hope you have a good day. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you tomorrow.